Is the United States president above the law? The answer may shock you. Yes, he is. Let me explain. The president is not a man. It's an institution. It's an office. It is a tangible thing. And that thing lives outside of the person of a man or a woman. Men and women come in and out of that entity called the presidency. Contained within the presidency is the same power that is contained within the headship of the late Queen Elizabeth, the current King Charles. There is a reason that Her Majesty does not have to have a driver's license or a tag on her vehicle, because it is from her person that the authority to grant such things comes from. Therefore, if she is the grantor of a driver's license, giving you permission to drive on her roads, she doesn't need that same permission. You're saying, but we're not Great Britain. That doesn't compare. Absolutely, it does. Because the Queen, now that they're a constitutional monarchy, is no longer vested in herself, but rather in the office of the monarchy. The presidency and the monarchy, in many ways, are just alike. Contained within it, the monarchy, the presidency, lies the total power to execute laws. Now, a monarchy has much greater power to execute many other things, but in the United States, the execution of all law, not the creation of law, but the execution thereof, lies completely and firmly within the office of the presidency and in the man or the woman that fills that office. While they fill it, they are above the law, because anything else would be insanity. You cannot put a man in a prison that he holds the key to. Every prison in this nation is under the purview and the direct authority of the President of the United States of America. Every law enforcement agency in this nation is beholden to the President of the United States of America and serve at his pleasure. That's why the power to classify and declassify documents lies solely within the presidency. I'm going to prove it to you even further. A man that commits a crime, a high crime, which means a big crime, or a misdemeanor, what happens to that person, you or me? If we commit a high crime and a misdemeanor, where do we go? You guessed it. We go directly to jail. We don't pass go. We don't collect $200. We go to jail. What happens if a president commits a high crime or a misdemeanor? Does that same law apply to him? The Constitution says no. What happens to him? We remove him from that power. We remove him from that office through a process called impeachment, which is basically an indictment, which means nothing unless it is approved by the Senate. If the president is impeached, he is not sent to jail, he's sent home. That means the presidency is above the law. Don't let people convince you otherwise. All you can do to a sitting president is to get them out of that office. Because while they're in that office, they are shielded from all the criminal consequences that you and I are not shielded from. And rightly so. You cannot vest authority in a person and then imprison them while they hold that authority. It's insanity to even think so. Now, that brings me down to the indictment against President Donald Trump. Everything they have indicted him for, everything, is connected to his time in the presidency. Now, many people would say, no, he committed these crimes after he left office. No. When he took the documents that was under his purview, while he was still in office, those documents made their way to Mar-a-Lago and New Jersey, wherever they went under his care. The disagreement with NARA happened after he left office, but it was still connected to an action that took place while he was in office. There's a few things when I read the indictment of Donald Trump that I did not see. And I call it the dog that didn't bark. In other words, there's some missing things in the indictments, such as not one mention of the Presidential Records Act. Not one. Not one mention of executive privilege, or the fact that the president has all authority to classify and declassify. Pause for a moment. I want to ask you a question. You've watched the news. You've seen the left-wing liberals lose their mind when you tell them that the president has that authority, he can declassify anything, and they scream, it doesn't work like that. Okay. Prove it. Show us the documents. Prove it that that's not how it works. The truth is, it is a very gray area. There is nothing that tells us how it works. So therefore, if there's nothing to hinder the power, then nothing can interfere with the power. Now, the special counsel, Jack Demon Smith himself, he cites in the indictment various executive orders. And that's laughable and almost embarrassing for such a great attorney. If you're going to cite as your authority executive orders regarding how to classify documents, you must remember executive orders are not binding authority over a president. Think about it. Think about it. Who has the authority to create an executive order? The president alone. The president alone cannot be bound by what he has issued from himself. That is binding on everyone under his authority. These are simply internal rules for governing employees of the executive branch. But you cannot contain or constrain the president with an executive order when he is the executive. It's like me owning a company and I release a memorandum that says how we're going to do things. And tomorrow I decide I don't want to do it that way. That doesn't mean you can decide that. You don't own the company. You don't have the authority. I can change my rule any day of the week. I own the company. The executive power is not constrained by an executive order. If the president can make and unmake an executive order at his pleasure, then it cannot bind him. Do you not understand? You cannot bind the one that gave the order with the order that came from his person. You can bind everyone else under his authority. And then Jack Demon Smith quotes the Code of Federal Regulation. He cites that. But like it or not, and I know people don't like this, but the Code of Federal Regulations, guess who has the authority to issue those codes? Guess who has the authority to not issue? The president. It's all under his purview. So like it or not, the president is the source of authority for this so-called Code of Federal Regulations. Everything they have cited in the indictment is under the authority of the very man that they're trying to use them against. You cannot confine in a prison the man that's got the keys to the prison. It's sort of dumb. It's like Mayberry Jail. If you put Andy Griffith in the jail, he's got the keys. He just opens the door and comes right back out. Why? That jail cannot hold him. He's got the key to it. This is why the media is having conniption fits over this so-called breach of secrecy in meetings with foreign leaders. That's a fake argument. Here's why. When you elect a president, you give him all power over foreign policy. He can say whatever he wants to say to whomever he wants to say it, and you can do nothing about it. You voted to give him that authority. He was never, ever the president. Federal foreign policy is his job. He's elected by you to do it. He can decide what to share, when to share it, who he wants to share it with. Trump was never treated as a normal president and allowed to use his authority. Now, no one has been prosecuted, anyone else except Donald Trump. And I want you to understand as I close, when they use the argument, no one is above the law, they're wrong. They're flawed. The office of the presidency is above the law, because if it's not above the law, then it cannot enforce the law. The law enforcement must pour out of a source, and that source is the president. Now, if that president commits a high crime or a misdemeanor against the law, then all we can do to him is remove him from office. Hello, Richard Nixon. Why didn't Richard Nixon go to prison? Shouldn't he have gone to prison? He was in an office that cannot be prosecuted. And that's the facts. I'm Professor Toto. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.